Has he been in solitary confinement?
Yes, he's been in the hole, which they call here is the SHU, Special Housing Unit.
Mm-hmm.
He's been there ever since his arrest, so it's been almost 2 years now.
So he's been in solitary confinement for a solid year?
Yeah, it's going on 2 years.
It's gone on, I'm sorry, for how long now?
It's going on 2 years now.
On 2 years, all of this time without let up in solitary confinement?
Yes.
So he's by himself.
Yes.
There's no one else around. How much time does he get out of the cell they keep him in? They generally give prisoners an hour a day.
No, it's not every day. It's once in a while they'll let him out.
It's once in a while. The rest of the time, it's around the clock he's in this place.
Yes.
Jenny, I actually wrote it twice. I wrote an article on the U.S. prison system that had nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I called it, this was a couple of years ago, and I called it the U.S. Gulag prison system that targets the poor, mostly black and Latinos, the kind of people who make very easy targets.
Yeah.
And I gave an example of what it's like to be in a so-called supermax prison where prisoners are kept in solitary confinement. And I said, imagine having to spend 24 hours in your bathroom, a bathroom with no windows, with enough food and water, and a place to lie down that might not be the most comfortable place, but a place to lie down so you could sleep. 24 hours under those conditions, all by yourself, and you couldn't come out. Well, after 24 hours, you'd be going stir crazy. Mm-hmm. And then my next line, my punchline was, not all of them have this fate, but too many do. Yeah. So I said, now imagine spending the rest of your life there. Yeah. It is beyond saying that it's outrageous. This takes, and to do it to anybody, to do it to a guilty person, Jenny, but to do it to an innocent man. What kind of a government does this to people? What kind of a civilized country does this to people? Well, we do it to people all the time, and nobody knows about it. They get the headlines, Jenny, that your government has found another bad guy, and we'll take them out of circulation so they don't harm anybody. And the public never learns that bad guy is completely innocent, never did a thing, that your government is the bad guy. And then when they put them in these prisons, these hellholes, whether it's a detention center or whether it's a federal or a state prison, they're not places anybody wants to be put into. And there are people in these places that maybe belong there. There could be some violent people who really do commit crimes, and you don't want them running loose because they could hurt other people. It's the innocent ones that we have to be concerned about. But even the bad ones, Jenny, there are prison rules and regulations. I haven't written about them in detail, but I've mentioned them in a couple of my articles, or at least several times I've mentioned them. And there are rules and regulations, which is the law of the land, that says this is what you must do in treating prisoners. Well, even the worst of them, Jenny, in these supermax prisons, get some of these rights. The right to get out of this cell, at least a little bit, the right to have contact and communication with your relatives, with your friends on the outside, at least a reasonable amount of time to have consultations, reasonable ones with your lawyers, and so on and so forth, and you have to be treated humanely. But then the way it turns out oftentimes, it's at the discretion of the government, the prison authorities, to do what they want. And who's going to know who's going to challenge them? What else can you tell listeners about what you know that's happening to Tristan right now?
He's just getting treated very poorly. He's very disappointed about what happened. And he just said he's hoping for the appeal. And that's all he told me.
So he's in a state of limbo.
Yeah.
With no idea in the world how this will be resolved. sometimes there are good endings to these stories, Jenny. I wrote. I don't have it up on my desktop now, but some months back I wrote about a Yemeni sheikh and his assistants that were convicted fraudulently. They did nothing. They were convicted for their charity, if you can imagine that, for their charitable services. And the government referred to what they did as terrorism or conspiracy to commit terrorism. It's absolutely outrageous. And they were put in a supermax prison. But then on appeal, the conviction was overturned. They got very long sentences, essentially life sentences, 50 years, 60 years, I forget the length exactly. But they were essentially life sentences for these people. They were overturned. I'm not current on their case right now. The government can appeal the appeals court verdict and take it to a higher court, I guess the Supreme Court. Appeal the overturning of the verdict to see whether they can get a higher court, the Supreme Court, to go along with them. And even if they don't, they maybe can recharge people, bringing new charges. We need to take another break, Jenny. The music signifies that. Let's do that, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Welcome back. I'm on with Jennifer Duka, Jenny Duka, wife of Tristan Duka. Jenny, let me give listeners a little more information about the case against your husband and the other four. Again, this was all entrapment. There was no plot. There was no crime. Your husband and I believe the others, they used to like to do things that a lot of people in the country do.
Yeah.
Go hunting or doing target practice and things.
Yeah.
So they got them involved in a scheme to buy some guns.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, people buy guns in the country all the time. Doesn't mean they go out and shoot people with them.
Yeah. And
we make a very, very big deal in the country about Second Amendment rights, which has nothing to do with individuals owning guns, but we make it seem as though it gives them a right to own maybe bazookas if they want to have them, but to own guns for hunting or target practice or whatever, it's a perfectly legal activity.
Yeah.
So this is what your husband and others were doing.
Yeah.
But the plot was with these informants being wired was that your husband and the others attempted to attack soldiers on Fort Dix, wage war on the U.S. Army. I mean, the whole idea is so preposterous that it's hard to imagine anybody would believe it. Let me read a quote from the New York Times, which is unusual for them because they usually go 100% on the side of the government. But in the same article I quoted about the conviction, I have a line in my article, and I'll just read it. Even the New York Times admitted that, quote, the 5 defendants seem more like South Jersey than seething jihadists.
Yeah.
And then I added, just using my words to say what the Times was saying, based on their backgrounds, their employment, their normal activities, and the trial evidence showing that there was nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, these were 5 ordinary guys doing what many, many others in the country do and in other countries. And how do you convict people from doing normal everyday things and yet say, even if it's not true, say they were plotting to commit a crime? Because that's exactly what went on. So even the New York Times threw up a red flag and said, whoa, I mean, there's something about this that just doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Well, I would say to the New York Times, if you made that statement, then why didn't you come down hard on the side of these innocent men and go at your government for daring to trump up a case to convict them? Why didn't your headline read that?